So in 2016, myself and the artist Jessie Jones pitched to represent Ireland at the Venice Biennale. And thinking about what representation, national representation means, we were determined to reflect what had become a very strong cultural urge to repeal the Eighth Amendment, which in Ireland is essentially to give abortion rights to women, to remove an amendment which had equated the life of the fetus to the life of the woman. When addressing this kind of a cultural movement through contemporary art, we really wanted to think about why we are in the position that women's bodies are controlled by anybody else in the first place. The state, the patriarchy, the church, whatever. And ended up looking back quite deep in time to the oppression of women through the historical witch trials, to ask, as the historian Silvia Federici has asked, not just how it happened, and not what were the mechanisms of the burning and the trials of the witches, but why did it need to happen? What was such a threat within women that they needed to be controlled in such a manner?
I feel like Tremble, Tremble connected with what was already happening in the culture underneath, and through the representation at the Biennale, I think it gave us a sense, as particularly as women in Ireland, a sense of confidence that our stories were important. And at the time in Ireland, we were really arguing for our right to reproductive rights. It was a very complicated argument to be having. We had to be really clear in terms of like the political space we were taking up. However, I feel like the role of art and the role of an artwork like Tremble Tremble was also so important because it spoke to all the complicated, unconscious parts of that story that didn't have a space within the public sphere, because we had to speak it very clearly to be heard. And I feel very passionate that art allows us to speak about the things that we can't reconcile with that kind of dogmatic language of everyday life, particularly in a time of like political crisis or political transformation. And I feel like the Tremble Tremble, for me anyway, was a way of speaking to all of that, but with a kind of polyphonic like desire to connect also to the unconscious worlds, um, and what was really behind that political moment for women, and for our society.
Often the national discourse about any kind of issue can become so compressed and so simplified that it fits in a number of bullet points on the side of a bus. And I really believe that art, with all its diverse opinions and group exhibitions that can bring things together, that can open up an idea in so many prismatic ways, can help that issue, whatever it is, borderlines in the age of Brexit, debt that we're facing today in the midst of a cost of living crisis, can make these issues much more complex than we're talking about in the public sphere, and hopefully contribute to a much less polarised public debate about how each of these issues affect us. Well, after the 9 months of the exhibition being on in Venice, it began to tour internationally, and when it came back to Dublin, Ireland, I think it was 1 week after the referendum had been won. Now, there were very many people across the nation who were lobbying to have this happen, and it was an extraordinary feat, I think. But as we opened the exhibition, we had Alva Smith, who had led the campaign within Ireland. We had artists who had also done many other things, giving speeches in relation to it. But there was a clear understanding of the role that arts had played, including Jessie's work, including Tremble Tremble, that it helped affect the hearts and minds of people who were ultimately going to vote in this referendum. And as a highly, highly Catholic culture, there's a large shift going on in how people understand the importance of that issue, abortion rights in Ireland today.